There may be a few more people joining us, but I think I'll go ahead and get started. It's 5 after 7 Central Time, so 5 after 8 Eastern Time, and I know people are joining us from all over. My name is Mike May. I'm one of the librarians at Carnegie Stout Public Library in Dubuque, Iowa, and I'm really excited to have Don Besker with us this evening. He's going to talk about automatons and marionettes and puppets that he's been working on. And I just have some quick announcements. We're in Zoom, and there are a few things to be aware of. Your settings may be a little bit different depending on what type of device you're using, but there is a speaker view and a gallery view. And if you just want to pay attention mostly to who is currently speaking, the speaker view would work well. And then if you'd like to look at everyone, there's a gallery view. While we're doing the presentation, if you would prefer, you're able to mute your microphone. That might be a good idea, just so there's no background noise. And you can also mute your video. And then that way, more of the viewers will be focused on our presenter. We are recording this session, and if I'm able to save the files correctly and upload them correctly, I'll share that in the next day or two on the library YouTube channel and the library Facebook page. And if you have trouble finding those, just send me an email to the address where you got the Zoom link at, and I'll respond and share the recording that way. And be sure to watch for our upcoming virtual programs. We're trying to cope with COVID right now, but we're still able to do programs online like this. And we have a lot of great stuff coming up. And we have recordings of authors and presenters that have been with us previously. So there's a lot to look at and to enjoy. So watch for that. This evening, we have Don Besker. A couple of months ago, a librarian here at Carnegie Stout, Sarah Smith, one of my colleagues, sent me a link to an NPR story about an artist who was working in the studio at one of the most difficult times of coronavirus, where everybody was self-isolating, staying at home, and not really doing much. But this artist was coping with that by making automata, these mechanical sculptures that have intricate mechanisms and that do interesting things. And I really got a kick out of that. I thought it was a really bright spot in kind of a dark time. And I was hoping to be able to share it with people here. So I sent an email to Don, and he agreed to join us this evening. So Don Besker is in Bethesda, Maryland, just outside of Washington, D.C., and he's in his studio. And I'm going to go ahead and another thing I didn't mention, there is a chat button on your toolbar. If you have questions or comments, you can put those in the chat, and I'll try to pay attention there. Or if Don's talking and you want to ask him a question about what he's talking about, I think he welcomes those. So feel free to ask your question through the audio or the video or the chat, however you are most comfortable. And after Don's presentation toward the end, we'll have another opportunity for questions and comments. And we'd really like people to participate and let us know what you think. So with that, Don, I'm gonna mute my video and my microphone, and I'll let you take it from here.
All right, sounds good. First of all, thank you to the library for inviting me to do this. This is a first time thing for me to try and do. So I will be obviously winging it and with my extreme low level of technical knowledge, it's really going to be a challenge, but we'll see what happens. I live here in DC, and I work in a studio in my house, a little converted bedroom. So I thought maybe I would start off by showing you my studio here. Walking through the door, various things, sculptures hanging around. Those are some old sculptures I did years ago, some Japanese things, toys, some automata. This is where all good woodworkers keep their bandsaw, right underneath the workshop table there. Got my drill press, my scroll saw. This is kind of a bird's eye view of the studio here, where I do everything. So it only goes to fit that I build small things because I have a small studio, perhaps. I don't know. Actually, I was building small things before I did this as it was. So a little bit about my background. When I was 16, I met Jim Henson, and I decided to become a puppeteer. And when I was 18, I met a puppeteer here in the DC area by the name of Bob Brown. And a couple of years later, I started working with him as a puppeteer. And from there, that's where I learned my, my trade, so to speak. He traveled the world in the United States doing shows. And let me just show you here. This is just kind of a shot here of publicity photo. This is Bob down here. So you can see the scale of the puppets. We did shows, industrial films, pilots, shows with symphony orchestras, and we did all different types of puppetry. As you can see here, the swan up top is a marionette. The Cinderella and her sister here are rod puppets. The lion here is a black theater puppet. This mother figure here from one of the operas is a very large rod puppet, kind of a parade type puppet. These old black theater puppets, wolf down here. So I got to work with a lot of different materials and huge scale of things. And Bob was really is a wonderful man, and just gave me ultimate knowledge, just being able to work in his studio and the history, him and Judy both, the history of puppetry, and just being able to meet so many people and to be involved there. So I worked with them for a long, actually still work from Bob's still around, so we still do shows every now and then. And then, let me see here. Trying to. So then, so I left Bob and I started my own company and started doing one-man shows, touring the area and doing films and pilots and all that sort of weird stuff. So I'm just going to show you a couple shots of some stuff here. With working with Bob, he worked a lot in styrofoam and felt. So everything was, you know, just carved styrofoam, covered in a hard shell, and then we would stretch fabric, felt, or whatever it was around top. So it was a very soft type look. When I went out on my own, I started doing things more in paper mache. This is paper clay here. This was a show, these black theater puppets for a school. And some hand puppets for a local theater built around here. It was Shakespeare Theater. Let me show you. And then I built this is a very early puppet type mouth puppet foam figure from the 80s. He's all soft foam, and then he's quilted. Everything is in here is quilted. Plastic spoon for eyes. And it's painted. And he's big mouth puppet like this, very soft. Move around. Raffia hair here. He used to have hair like that. All right. This is another soft figure. Here's the dragon, once again, just very soft, once again, and then painted up to give the different types of scales. I started working at I learned marionettes by working with Bob, but then I also would work at the summers at a local theme park around here called King's Dominion, and I would do a one-man marionette show, 6 shows a day, 6 days a week, and that's how I learned to work marionettes. It was a one-man show. It was a pre-recorded thing, so I just sat there and did the puppets. And I happened to have one of the puppets, actually the first puppet I ever, let me see. This is a Yogi Bear puppet because it was Yogi Bear themed. And this was built by a local puppeteer here by the name of Jimmy Rowland. And anyway, I just like to show him off every now because he's a very beautiful marionette. He must have about 30 strings on him. His eyes move from side to side, his eyebrows go up and down. Various things like that. All right, I'm gonna show you here. Turn it back here. And okay, so over there. Friend introduced me many years ago to polymer clay, and I just fell in love with polymer clay. And at that point, I started making marionettes very small, very tiny, and I would sell them in galleries, sci-fi conventions, and things like that. This is one of the early ones. He's all carved out of clay. You can say he's fully articulate. This is another one. All of these puppets here, and the average height is maybe 6 to 7 inches in height. This is Harley Quinn, Batman villain. This is a little gnome critter, a little evil gnome guy here. His jacket is I found off an old keychain. It was an old keychain from like Spencer Gifts or something like that. So a little leather jacket. So I took that leather jacket off and I turned it into his little jacket there. You can see his tats down there are so magic markered on. A close up of the face, scaled. And so the little puppets I would sell with stands, sort of matching stands. So this guy had a little stand here with bones. This little figure is polymer clay again. The body is polymer clay wrapped around a wire frame, and the head is a bird skull I got from somewhere. I don't remember where. And designed them up and strung them up. Like that one. This is a little fella here. I use taxidermy eyes. So this is a glass eye on him there. And it's like I don't remember the animal. It might be a lion eye or something like that. I like to do my own take on superheroes. Now, this is my Superman, one of the many Supermans I've done in my life here. I guess this is kind of his little surly brother. His big fists and little tiny little abdomen there. This is a neat figure that came from a doodle that I was doing. And I thought it looked so neat in the doodle that maybe I could get it to, let's see, I was trying to zoom in a little bit. Yeah. So this guy here is wire. This snoot here is just a wire. Everything here is just wire. And then where the little drops are here are little pieces of polymer to make the joints here. And the wings, this is tissue paper, colored tissue paper here. This marionette, there's a gallery in Tokyo that sells my work periodically, and this one I sent to Japan, and they sold it, and it ended up being a main character in a Japanese reggae rap video, which I didn't know such thing existed. But anyway, this thing was out there dancing around the sands. It was kind of very odd. So I worked a lot in, oh, actually, let me show you. Yeah, let me show you something else back here. Let me get you here. All right. Let me show you some more of the polymer marionettes. Get a light on here. I'll get this a little better. It's a little skeleton marionette, but this is all colored. This is the color of the this is all colored polymer run through a pasta machine in order to get this effect, and layered and cut and coned and striped, and then sort of made around a wire frame to build to get this. So there's no paint on this guy other than the head, this skull head, but you can see here they all move here. Let me show you. Tin Man. Wizard of Oz. He's all polymer clay as well. Show you a little different one. This is the little scarecrow. Obviously, we must have a Wizard of Oz set hanging around here somewhere. And then let me show you one last polymer clay fella. Skeleton, obviously. He's a little skeleton here. He's made out of polymer clay and wire. So I try to get things very, very thin and skinny here, which is sort of my style in some ways, is morphed into a sort of this streamline, very how I can test some of the material sometimes, but see how thin I can get things. Dramatic here. Get you back to pictures. And sure. So I moved out of polymer clay because I was having issues with breakage on various stuff. So I thought, well, let me try wood. So I started carving in wood, and this is one of my first marionettes that I made in wood. And a lot of my figures, when I worked with clay, it seemed like a lot of the figures just came, I would just take a piece of clay, start playing around with it, and see what happened. With wood, I tended to work more off a doodle. So this was kind of you can see at his feet there, the initial doodle, and then the finished product after that. Okay. Yes.
Have you ever worked with epoxy clay? Because it's just like iron. It's less fragile than polymer.
Yeah, I've heard of it. Yeah, I've heard of it. And no, I have not played with it yet. I've been sort of in a wood phase here, and been kind of happy with that. This is this figure here is all wood, basswood. He's all fully jointed and able to move around. This figure here is all carved up. This is poplar. This whole figure is carved, and that's just that's before he's strung up and painted. He's covered in gesso right now. That's the painted. That's the same figure painted up. Put little leather boots on him. This is kind of another version of that kind of Hawken type painting, which is always fun to do. This little marionette here is about 7 inches tall, and he's all carved out of ash. It's very hard wood to carve, but what the heck? Give it a shot. I wanted to do that real big, goofy, curved forehead for whatever reason. I just thought it made me laugh. So there's that. This is a little mermaid, carved out of wood. A little segmented body there on the tail. This is another little wood figure that I made here. It's a bit of here. You can see how he moves. This one's all carved out of basswood. These little scales are actually imprints of a nail set. Just pounded into it to give it that little scale look. This is a horse I carved. What is, once again, a segmented neck. This is all painted up. This must have about 10 different layers of paint on it. Just like the finish effect there. This is a marionette that I built about 5 years ago. She's all carved out of wood. The wings back here are colored watercolor paper that I cut into leaves and then painted up, wired and painted up so I could form them and turn them into the wings. These hands here are laminated, so this is not, the hand is not one piece of wood. Each finger is a separate piece of wood glued together. So each finger is carved separately and then glued together and then sculpted down to make one hand. This is a different figure here from wood again, leather shoes, and then the leaves are actual leaves, oak leaves from our maple from our tree in our front yard. So from miniature marionettes, I forgot I had some wood carvings on here. I got into chainsaw carving. So this is the first chainsaw carving that I ever did here. Big gargoyle, big 12-foot gargoyle. It was kind of fun to do. Some seahorses. Did a Kermit the Frog in University Park, which is not too far from here, which is where Jim Henson grew up. It's in the neighborhood that Jim Henson grew up. So carved a big Kermit the Frog there. This another heron out there in the woods there at the park. Owls. So it was kind of nice. It's nice kind of working big. And also it's a big head here. This is at a kid's playground. This is a tree that was doubled. That's the way it was chopped up. So we turned it into 2 herons. So this is all chainsaw. I don't use any angle grinders or anything like that. I just go all straight saw. This is another tree, and the tree was upside down, so we made that. This is where this thing sits out on our side porch. Someone had a tree down, and he was a big Lorax fan, so we did Lorax. So I started. Those were, stumps that were in people's yards. So I started taking stuff and carving them and painting them up and selling them. This is just some examples of that. Different carvings here. This before the painting. I'm so paint them with latex paint or milk paint or whatever I have sort of laying around. I didn't realize I had this many pictures on there. Cat, elephant. This painted elephant. Big. Penguin. Close up. Mr. Penguin. Our dog. Big totem pole. For a boys' camp. Chicken, monsters. Well, I have it in here. All right. I'm going to scroll through these kind of fast. These aren't really. All right. So after a while, after selling the marionettes, I got a little tired of people saying like, oh, I tangled the strings. Oh, my cat would attack it. Oh, it'd fall off the shelf. And more. So I thought, okay, I'm just going to start making dolls, where I wouldn't have to worry about that. So this is a doll that I made. This is all wood. It's a circus geek. And then really they're just marionettes, right, without the strings attached to them, but maybe it's a little easier. I think this was basswood, and that's my actual hair on top of him. This is another jointed this ash as well, and this came from this little sketch right here, this little doodle right here. And turned him into that. Pigs. All right, so I went from doll making and marionette making, and I thought, well, with the whole string issue, I thought, well, if these things can move by themselves, people wouldn't be scared of them. So I decided to try my hand at making automata. And this is, I think, the first automata that I ever made for my daughter, who was very much into frogs. And so, then one lever, so the head moved. Of course, I'm filming and doing this all at the same time because why not? Combination of two. This little frog is all made out of polymer clay. So very simple, just two little levers that did things. This is the second, one of the very early ones I did as well too. There was a puppeteer in Germany, and she would make these tube puppets. They were just tubes of different sizes in one, and you were underneath. You push the tubes up and it moved the mouth, and the mouth would move, and that's how the figure moved. So I always liked that look. So when I did this figure, this is what I was thinking about, was that. So I decided to do a little baby. And you turn the crank. It's green. I sold this figure, but I wish I had him back because I really wanted to put something that like squeaked or like, and then went and jump. You can see the mechanics here. So it's a simple little cam lever and gear there. He's paper mache. Except for little figures there. His bottle and this little rattle are all carved out of wood. This is just a still shot, I guess. This is a piece of automata that I used to have a cartoon here in my studio, which I can't find right now. But it was the same face on all 4 panels. And the very last panel, it was just this expression of this person looking at you. And then the last line of the panel is stop staring at me. And so I wanted to make this, what happens when you press this little lever down here in front of him, his eyes bulge out and his arms go back like, wow. And I'll show you. Unfortunately, I don't have a video of that, but here's the mechanics, kind of. I found these. I am a horrible documentarian, and I never take pictures. It's very rare I take pictures of things. So I was very surprised to find this. I was very surprised by that. You see where the lever here drops. Can you all see my cursor? Yes, okay. Yeah, so you can see that when that lever drops there, it pulls these strings right here, which then there was a string which there was a mechanism that bulged out the eyes, and the strings then pulled his arms back. And I stretched hose over top. I wanted to get those eyes really, really to a slit where all you saw was that little dot of a pupil. But this is, there's an automaton maker in England by the name of Paul Spooner. And I had seen a piece that he was selling, which was a fish in a frying pan. And when you turned the crank, the fish flipped around in the frying pan. And I thought that was a hysterical image. And so I thought, well, how can I steal that? So this is how I stole it. You can see the magnet there underneath. Which I would sit in my studio for hours on end just doing this. Pivot to the left, pivot to the right. So anyway, that used to make me laugh a lot. So I made these in different versions here. I made someone who was obviously a big Oakland sports team fan. So I did the A's versus the Raiders. We did sumo wrestling. God versus the devil. All right. Then I started getting into bigger automata. And I have this piece here, but this is kind of the mechanisms here. You'll see. Let's see, this is Diva here. So this is paper mache. There's some polymer clay action going on. Those are the sketches that I just, so if I do sketch for these, it's usually just more for scale as I'm building. It's the back end, so you see strings and wires going through here. The original concept for this figure was those little toys that when you squeeze the bottom of them, they collapse. They've got the elastic running through them. That was the thought, was that this figure would be all, in her glory, standing up, and then you press the button and she just collapse into nothingness. So let me get the figure here. So this is the figure. Just a little side here. This says blah. And I'll make her work for you, and then I'll show you let's see here. So turn the crank, get things moving. Her eyes is up. There's her head back. Pulls her arms up. The little sign says fabulous. And I point blah. And she goes back to blah. I'm gonna try something here. we go. Let's see. We're just going to move to my phone here. Let's see if we can do it this way. So this is the gear train. What that does is normally if you just turn the crank once, everything happens in once. So you need a gear train. So it will slow down the movement by the time it gets to the crankshaft back here and the cams and for doing all the timing. So I think this one is geared to, I think it's like 1 to 20 maybe. So basically it means 20 turns of the crank will do 1 revolution of the shaft back here, of the levers and everything. I'll turn it around to this side here. So you can see kind of a lot. It looks a little complicated, but it actually really isn't. There's not a lot that actually happens on this one. These those wires there are the strings which run up through the body, which we saw in the earlier photograph here. Let me start turning things. So that big cam right there presses on the lever. That lever comes down, works the scissor lift, which lifts up the body. These 2 levers right here are tied to the strings, which will raise her arms. As you see, those levers start rising up. So right now she's at full position, but her hands aren't up. These cams right here will press against these levers, which will pull that wire. Yep, let's see here. Do it this way, which will then pull our arms up. So let's see. And then you'll see the big cam there is just about done on that lever, which drops and she collapses. So that's basically how it works. There'll be a test in 5 minutes. All right. Let's see. All right.
Don,
Yes.
is your little lady, is she made out of wood or polymer or what?
She's a mix. Her head is polymer. The body is the bottom is paper mache.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Let me move back to photos. Share. Okay, there we go. Sorry. All right. I'll play that while I'm getting the. That's another the mechanism there to get into. Okay. All right. This next little figure, this is a prototype. So after making the scissor lift for her, I started sort of seeing all kinds of things in the scissor lift, and I was coming up with ballerinas, kind of working their limbs into that, and when it stretched, they kind of did things. But then once again, for some reason, I turned back to frogs. So this, because you can make look a very small body, and like how tall can you make it? So this was kind of a one of the few drawings that I actually do here. This is rack and pinion, which is how this figure is going to operate, which I'm going to show you here. Okay. Sure. We'll go here. All right. So That little
Don, there's a question in the chat. How many hours would it take to make something like that?
You know, I get that question a lot. And since I do sort of just fly by the seat of my pants, just kind of figure how things work, I really don't know how long I put into these. I I don't know. I mean, once they're built, then maybe I might be able, you know, it's like, oh, okay, I could, like the woman, the blonde, fabulous woman, if I was to rebuild her again, since now all the troubles are solved, uh, I don't know, maybe 3 4 weeks, I guess. Maybe I don't know, maybe quicker than that. I just really don't know. I really have a horrible grasp on those kind of things. I'm sorry. That's not much of an answer, but that's about where it is. So this little figure here is made out of wood. Whoops. And she might be a little too big to handle here, but let me pop this out of his mouth. So the idea is here is when I turn this is a little rack and pinion. It goes very tall. And what happens is, let's see, I'm not sure. There's a little fly here. And set the fly up top here. And yeah. So anyway, what happens is when the little fly comes up, it lands in his mouth. And then it goes back down to small again. I need to put it does it like 9 or 10 out of times, but I got to put a brace. I got to put another brace here because there's too much vibration up here on here, and it'll throw that little fly off. But anyway, that's kind of the thought. So these are actually very simple. I'll just show you his mechanism here. So it's just a rack and pinion. Means that when that turns, it moves the lever this way and that way, just depending on which way it's turning. It's a fairly simple thing there. I decorated the bottom there with little fish, did some carvings of fish and various little underwater things here. This one's here all made out of wood. So I made another frog shortly after that. Once again, the whole scissor lift type thing. And this guy here. And this one here took a strangely long time to make. And the reason is because when he lifts, the dumbbells didn't want to stay even. I thought that since it's just pivoted right here, I thought I would be able to just equal out the weight here and it would just naturally do that. But it didn't. So I had to rig up, I had to figure out a way to force it to keep itself balanced in the back here. And that was the longest. So this guy here wouldn't take very long. But this one's kind of fun. There's actually sort of acting here. You can just a little playing around with him. Just, you can do it, you can do it, you can do it, you can do it. Ta-da! I thought about actually at the end here when he hits that final thing, a little flag that goes as ta-da, but another day. All right. Let's go to the next one. So a lot of the gears that I make I cut from wood. So these are just show some of the gears, some of the failures, some of the various different types of gears that I printed. You can see here I print them out on paper and then cut them out on the scroll saw, which was in my studio there, we saw earlier. Sort of teeth broken, so I just was lazy and just thought I would cut in a few teeth here to work. But as time has sort of moved on, I did buy a 3D printer, and I now do the gears. Come on now. These pictures aren't gonna, oh, that might be the end. Oh, that is the last one. Okay. All right. So let me stop sharing there. All right. I'm going to show you my next one then. So keeping with the tube idea,
Don, I have there's another chat question. When you're designing these, what's your process? Do you think of the figure and the action first and then try to design the gears to make it happen? Or could you talk about that?
Yes, thank you. I meant to talk about that. So thank you for bringing that up. Yes, I do find that I come up with the figures first, and I will build the figures first. I'll build them so at least they work above ground with everything, and then at that point, I'll get them mounted on a platform, and then I'll look at it and I'll go, all right, how much space do I have down there? And how can I make it work? So yeah, it all does happen from the top here. Sometimes I can, I'll think about, okay, well, like with the frog, it's like, okay, it's probably going to need a rack and pinion. So I'm probably not going to do anything really depth because there's really only one move when he goes up and when he comes back down. There was no other things to happen in, so I wouldn't have to be dealing with a lot of gears and cams and sort of that kind of stuff. So, but for the most part, yes, I build everything first, build the figures and everything, and then the stuff. So this little figure here, what happens? So you can see it's a woman, an old lady here, and she's at the grave of her fluffy, beloved pet. So when we turn the crank, old dead Fluffy comes to life, which then freaks her out. Ta-da, there you have it. So as you can see here, this is the gear ratio again. Once again, just one crank. For all that to happen in one turn would not be good to do. So it's got so I don't remember what this is, 1 to 10 or something like that. This is actually pretty fairly straightforward here. Once again, kind of like the other one. It's a lever that presses her up. There is a smaller piece of wood here that operates her eyes. So when just that part goes up, that exposes her eyes. And then when it hits the bigger tube, that then will carry up her mouth. And there, and then it drops back down again. And Fluffy works on this big cam right here, just a little simple timing cam, which just pulls a string. Fluffy's attached to the tombstone, so I don't have to put any mechanism on Fluffy at all. He's got springs. He's built with springs in him to give him a little life like that. So he's a little straightforward. Then I put a black bag down in there because I didn't want people seeing. Also, that's why I put this sort of curvy little piece here, just kind of hide Fluffy so you didn't see dead Fluffy in there before you turn things. This next one I'm going to show you is my most recent one and the most complicated one. This is this one I wanted to do a COVID inspired piece. I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. My first intention was a figure kind of walking along the street, and when he walked by a tree or a statue or something like that, a little COVID would just pop out. I didn't like that too much. So then I thought, well, what if he was like sitting on a park bench and he's wearing the mask? He takes the mask off and like thousands of little COVIDs just like jumped out like magnets and sort of attached to him. I like that idea, but I couldn't quite figure out how to do it. So at that point, I came up with this idea, which is kind of the same thought. And for those of you who have not seen it, I'll just see if we can get it to work here. So, you see here, oops, drops his mask. John COVID comes in, crushes him. And a little sign, people behind him say, "Wear your mask, please." And he goes back into his resting spot, puts his mask back up. So let me switch to the camera here, and I'll show you how this one works. Let me get to... All right. All right, so this little guy here is, so my original intention on this one was I just wanted the guy actually just standing alone on a platform, no people behind him, just him on a green platform. And when he dropped that mask, I wanted that COVID to come from below, just come right out of nowhere and from the back and just squish him right down. Trouble was the pivot point of that COVID piece would be here, and the arc to get it around and to hit him, and then to also be on top of him when he hit the ground. I would have had to just, the piece would be so long, it just wouldn't work. So I had to move the pivot point up to here, which is why then I hid the pivot point here, which actually is right, I'm spot right between these guys here. And right there. So the travel here works. So the first movement that happens on this guy is his eyes move from side to side. Let's see, actually, I might be a little too far in the mechanism here. Let's get him to, try and do this with one hand. Go to the cycle. All right, so when it goes there, his eyes move to the side. And that's done with this lever right here. This lever makes his eyes go from side to side. And that's worked by these two cams right here, which push up against there. And those are controlling a rod, which kind of like the old lady and the dog, there's a smaller rod here, which runs through that brass rod, which is connected to the tube. This is another tube guy. There's a smaller tube in there, which the eyes are connected to, which rotates with the turning of that inner tube. So there is a string. That string there goes and is controlled by this little lever right here, which is controlled by this cam right here. And when that happens, when it lets go, he drops that. He drops his mask. And at that point, other things happen here. I've got two levers, which, well, let's just see what happens here. Maybe from this side. These levers back here, This one here controls his body. So he'll squish when this one rises up. It takes the, it drops the lever so his body will squish down. And then this lever here makes the coronavirus go up. And this one pulls it back. So once again, I use a scissor lift again to help just sort of keep control. Let's see, where do we go here? Maybe here. Maybe something like that. You can see that the captions are, that's what those two levers are. And when that lever goes through, it hits that one, which presses those two levers, and that's what flings those caption bubbles out like that. Everything's very tight in there, so it's kind of hard to kind of see things, but that's kind of basically how it works. All right, let's stop that share. All right, this guy here is all made out of poplar for the most part, and his little pants here are spandex. There's nothing in them, so they collapse very easily. And that is just kind of thing. So I think that, oh, I never did, just not a piece of automata, but it was another little wood carved marionette that I made here. This is a little daredevil, little figure here that I was like made out of wood. It's all jointed wood. The neat thing about this guy is the joints here are little ball and socket joints made from quilting, the tips of quilting pin. Let me show pin. So this is actually the joint in there. This is inside his shoulder. And the reason that's in there is because his arm will go like this. But then because of that, his arm will also go out from side to side. So anyway. All right, I think that's it with the automata. I think that's all I've got to show you. So if there are any other questions, I'm more than happy to answer.
Don, when you work on pieces, do you work on one from start to finish, or do you have multiple projects going on at the same time?
Yeah, I do have multiple ones. Like for instance, this is another piece that I've been working on. This is a little samurai guy. And basically the thought is that he'll spin around like this, chopping his sword very quickly. Like chop, 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 as he kind of swings around like this. And as he's swinging around, little ninja cats are going to be popping up for whatever reason, attacking him for whatever reason. So that's the thought. So yeah, so I am working on this one here at the same time. And I'm working on one, I don't think I can reach my drawings fast enough, but it's a guy getting swallowed by a boa constrictor. And when he, so it'll be a fellow there sort of laying on the ground. The snake is there. As he gets into the snake will, and you'll see the body go into the snake. The snake's body will take the form of him. And then as it keeps going, the body comes back out. But when it comes back out, it's just a skeleton of the guy in the same pose. So I've started working on that. So yeah, I do work on multiple ones at the same time.
Are all of them manual, or do you have any kind of electric motors or digital equipment?
No, I don't. Yeah, no, everything. Yeah, no, everything is by crank.
I just wanted to comment that I thought it was clever that the the coronavirus has become so universally recognized that you could use it as a puppet character. And I also love the immediate gratification that I got from when the guy took his mask off. Bang! That was great. We should all see that.
Yeah. Yeah, that was kind of the, I was thinking of like the Monty Python thing where the big foot comes out, and just squishes people. So I wanted it to happen kind of real fast like that. Almost as soon as he drops it, bam, that's when it's going to get him. And it's funny because I was thinking, well, what does a coronavirus look like? And whatever. It's like, so my first thought was white and red. And I thought, well, okay, we'll go with that.
Where did you learn to do all the engineering to make them work, the automatons?
A lot of it is trial and error. There are some nice books. Actually, a book that I refer to a lot is there is a wonderful site in England called the Cabaret Mechanical Theater. And I purchased this book many years ago. And so it's Cabaret Mechanical Theater, a very good website. And you can get this book through there. And it's a very good about describing the very basics, general of what's going on with automaton, how you build it. It's levers, cams, and stuff like that. But it is very basic. And which I find actually a lot of them are very basic. And I think the reason is because, like, for instance, when I started building them, I thought the books would tell me, like, how to build them. It's like, okay, yeah, it's cams and levers. Yeah, but how does it do it and work? Mm-hmm. And that really comes with each piece. And there's a lot of figuring out in that way. So I think it'd be very difficult to really, because each piece is unique, it seems like, in how it's done. Yeah. There's also another book that I do recommend as well, which is very good. Is this book here. And it's paper automata, but it's paper automata that has you build the basic doings and workings of. So it shows, has you build cams and levers and timing and sort of stuff like that in that book. So that's a very good book to have as well. I think you might be able to get that through Cabaret too. I'm not sure.
Do you use computers or software in any of your design work?
No, like I said at the beginning, I have very little. I don't even know how to spell Zoom. I'm afraid we got this far. So,
have you ever electrified any of them?
No, I haven't. I did build a marionette one time that had electric lights, but no, nothing here yet. I want to do sound. I think sound is kind of needed in a couple of some of the things that I do, which would be fun. So I don't know exactly how that would be done. Maybe with a bladder and sound or clunking, or it might be electronic. I don't know.
Are you acquainted with the Chris Comack and Peter Medeiros? They're doll artists, but they also make automatons, and they're part of NIADA.
Yeah, I've seen pictures of their work before, but I have not met them, no.
Oh, okay. I'm a figurative art doll maker using polymer, and I haven't met them, but I talk to them online.
Okay.
You'd love them.
Yes, I have friends that are there. I have a very good friend, Nancy Wiley. Okay, yeah, I think Nancy is good friends with Chris.
Yeah, I've met her, seen her work.
Yeah.
What?
Audio is not good there. I can't.
Brad, I think your audio isn't working for us. If you wanted to ask a question in the chat, I think we could get it that way, though.
Sounds like a voice for one of your butterflies, Don.
I'm sorry, a voice for?
Sounded like a voice for one of your butterflies that just now. Get a chip and put it on your butterfly, you know?
Right.
This has been very interesting. You're very talented.
Thank you.
Enjoyed everything you do. You started out when you made your marionettes. Did you act with the marionettes? Did you do plays with them and everything?
I did with larger scale. I never did anything. I never performed with the smaller scale figures. Those were just built for sale.
Oh, they're wonderful.
Thank you. Yeah, you
Okay.
certainly perform with them. So.
Where do you market?
Well, that's another one of my faults is I'm a terrible self-promoter and marketer. So basic people just find out about me. I have a website. Things on it, but
You have a website?
you have a website, which is DB Puppet, Don Besker, dbpuppet.com.
Okay.
Were you at a Automatons a couple of years ago? Chris Chomek and Peter Metter were there as well.
Oh,
And Brett says he hopes to see you there again next year.
yeah, I just saw where it was. I didn't know one was happening in May. I saw that, and I saw where it had been moved to 2022. So yeah, most definitely, I will most definitely be there. I was at I think the first one, where yeah, the first one at the Morse Museum or something. Yeah, the first one I think it was. I don't remember seeing him there, so sorry I missed him.
I have a question. Are you doing most of these just for your own enjoyment, or are you selling them, or what motivates you to do this kind of artwork?
It is just for me. At some point, I will sell them because I do get tired of having things sit around the house. So I will sell them at some point. Just a matter of when. Yeah, I mean, I can't have a house full of marionettes and and chainsaw sculpture and an automata. My wife, I've already pressed her probably a little too far with some of the stuff, so I can't have weird stuff.
Do you counterbalance the pieces so they return to their original position?
Yes. Yeah. Do I counter that? I always make it so the pieces do return back to their regular position. Yeah, always time it out like that.
What's been your most difficult figure automaton to figure out? Something small, something large?
You know, so this COVID one is complicated, but I think because I had built those earlier ones, it made this one considerably easier to build and to think about. The woman who, the fabulous one, she took a very long time to make, and she is not how I envisioned her at all. But I learned oodles from working there. Originally, you'd see her legs. Those I had to scrap after a very long time of, 100 times of them not working consistently. So in that way, so the learning process was difficult. Maybe not the figures themselves, but the learning process was difficult. But that's the challenge. That's the fun side of it anyway. So
You like to work on whimsical. You like to create whimsy.
yeah, I think a little.
I like it too.
Good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you make marquettes to work out bugs first?
I've tried that. But I think sometimes when I've started making the marquettes, it seems like it takes just as long to make the marquettes as it does the actual figures. So I just go right and I'll get kind of part way into one. I'm like, wait a minute, I could have had that figure built by now. kind of the regular way. So I'll do that. I should. I think if I was better set up for it, like if I thought in advance, to buy Gator phone or to buy stuff and have my hot glue gun ready and paper and cardboard and stuff like that. Probably would, but I don't know. It probably would save me time, but I don't know how much.
Don, do you work at this full time? Is this your full time career?
No, it is not. I if I wanted to sell these, I don't even know where I would go to sell them. So I don't know how you would make a living doing this. No, I work as a scenic painter for an events company. My sort of full-time job, and then my chainsaw art actually is very busy as well. So that's between those two. That's how I make a living.
Great.
You told us that you used some of your own hair for one of the puppets or marionettes in the early part of your presentation tonight. You also used a bird skull. Are there other interesting found object stuff that you've included that would surprise us?
I did a puppet one time with rattlesnake vertebrae. I did one with a muskrat skull. I guess most of the stuff is bone oriented. Yeah, nothing else pops to mind. But yeah, so unless you consider wire a found object, but
Well, Don, thank you very much for showing us your work and joining us this evening. It was really, really fascinating.
Thank you for sharing.
I will save the recording and we'll share it on YouTube and the library Facebook page. If you have any comments or suggestions for the library about this program or any ideas for other programs, or have any suggestions about how to make this a better experience, please reply to the email that I sent to everyone and let me know. It will help us out to make the next event a little bit more enjoyable, hopefully. But I had a nice time tonight. Thank you very much, and thanks to everyone for joining us.
Thank you.
And feel free. Thank you. Yes, feel free to contact me. I'm dbpuppet@gmail.com. If you have any questions or anything else, please feel free.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Hey, good night.